So let's go through some selected parts. So let's start with section 2, and we're going to look at A, which I just underlined. And all you have to indicate here are the qualities and the Roman numeral and figured base analysis of these different chords. So let's see. I'm going to move over to a scratch piece of paper right there and copy some of these things down. Let's look at number 1. And we're going to take a look at, for example, the third one, right? This one right there. So what you can do is you can read that we're in the key of E, which of course has 4 sharps. Name them with me: F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, and D sharp. And this chord is rooted on D sharp. So let's go over to the scratch paper. So here I am, treble clef up there, 4 sharps, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the key of E, and D sharp, F sharp, A, and C sharp. Okay, so what we know is that D sharp in the key of E is scale degree 7. So this means that this is like in all major mode 7th chords, the one that's built on scale degree 7 is the 7 half diminished 7 chord. Okay, now confirm for yourself that this is in fact the correct quality. So first we start by looking at the triad embedded in the 7th chord, and those are the notes D sharp, F sharp, and A, and that does create a diminished triad. That little circle is meant to indicate diminished. It looks confusing, I know. So how about I write DIM for diminished? And then the interval from the root to the 7th, or D sharp up to C sharp, is a minor 7th. So confirm that for yourself. What you can do is you can always invert. So you take that D sharp and you move it on 1 octave up. So you'll actually end up producing an inversion if you do so. Here's the D sharp up on top in this iteration. And from C sharp up to D sharp is in fact a major 2nd, which remember inverts to a minor 7th. So that's how we know that this is a half diminished 7th, because it's a diminished triad plus a minor 7th from the root to the 7th. Or another way of thinking about it is we have 2 minor thirds, so D sharp to F sharp, minor third, F sharp to A, minor third, and then from the 5th of the chord to the 7th is a major third. So minor third, and then major third. And you remember that the distinction between a half diminished 7th and a fully diminished 7th is that the upper third from the 5th of the chord to the 7th of the chord, or from the chordal 5th to the chordal 7th, is a major third for half diminished and a minor third for fully diminished. So in this case, just to kind of keep playing around with these concepts, how do we make this upper third a minor third? Well, we have to take the C sharp on top and we have to flatten it. So if I were to do D sharp to F sharp to A, and then A to C natural, this would be all minor thirds. Again, confirm that that's the case. We know about the bottom thirds. Nothing has changed there. And then the upper third is again a minor third. And so this is a half diminished 7th, while the second example is a fully diminished 7th. Okay, so going back to the problem, we know what to label it. It's a 7, lowercase VII, half diminished 7th. Remember, the slash through the circle indicates a half diminished, right? Because we're cutting the circle in half. And then the quality is very simply, you just indicate circle slash 7. So going back to the problem, again, we're looking at number 1, example 3. We write 7, half diminished 7, and the quality is half diminished 7. Okay, pretty straightforward, right? And remember that this is true for all 7th chords built from the leading tone in major keys. That was a mouthful, I know, but let me say that one more time. This quality is true, that is half diminished 7th, when a chord is built, a 7th chord is built from the leading tone in all major keys. What about minor keys? What happens when we build a 7th chord from the leading tone there? And remember, in minor keys, The leading tone specifically represents taking the natural seventh, right, the natural seventh scale degree, which you know is called the subtonic, and raising it because we are in harmonic minor, right, which is a part of modal mixture. That's the technique, but you guys are pretty familiar with that. So let's take a look at number 2. And we're in G minor, as you can see, with 2 flats, B flat and E flat. And let's see if we can find an example here where the 7th chord is built from the 7th of the scale raised to become a leading tone. So I'm looking for the note F, right? Because that's one step below G, that is scale degree 7, and that's the subtonic. If it is raised, it becomes F sharp. So can I see an F sharp in the bass of one of these chords? Absolutely, there it is. Example number 2, in number 2. Remember, that's bass clef. So the notes here are F sharp, A, C, and E flat. So let's go over to the next page just to practice a bit. So I'm going to start right there. We're in bass clef and we're in G minor. That's 1 flat, 2nd flat, so G minor. And the chord given is F sharp, A, C, and E flat. Notice I'm not writing in the accidentals. I don't have to, not for myself at least, because I've already provided them in the key signature. But that's why I'm articulating this out loud so that I remember what notes I'm dealing with: F sharp, A, C, and E flat. So let's make sure that we go through this correctly. First of all, we know that F sharp represents that raised subtonic, the leading tone. In minor keys, the mode, or the quality of the leading tone 7th chord should be fully diminished. So I should be able to predict that this is a 7, fully diminished 7th. Notice that I'm not putting the slash through the circle because it's not half diminished. So how do I check that? Well, a couple of ways. First of all, start with the embedded triad, F sharp, A, C. So F sharp to A is a minor third, A to C is a minor third. 2 minor thirds stacked on top of one another constitute a diminished 5th. You can check that. F sharp to C natural is a diminished 5th. So this is a diminished triad. And then F sharp up to E flat, what's the quality of that 7th? Well, we can do the same thing we did with a prior example, that is that D sharp half diminished 7th in the key of E, and simply invert. So I'm going to take that F sharp on the bottom and flip it to the top of the chord. So I'll get A, C, E flat, and then on top, I've got my F sharp. So what is this interval of E flat to F sharp? Don't be confused by the sharp that seems to be next to the E flat. It isn't. It's just sort of spaced out so that I don't end up having the sharp in between the 2 note heads. That is graphically confusing. So, and the sharp can't be on the other side of the F, right? It has to be to the left. So this is the correct notational way of representing that sharp. So E flat to F sharp is 3 half steps. So that means this is an augmented second. Sorry about that. That's an augmented second, which inverts, remember to flip it back, to a diminished 7th. So this is a chord where we have a diminished triad plus a diminished 7th from the root to the 7th, and that creates a fully diminished 7th chord. And in keeping with what we did over here, you see where I just put that arrow, we can also determine that this is a 7th chord with all minor thirds. So let's just check that out. F sharp to A is a minor third, A to C is a minor third, and C to E flat is also a minor third. So since these are all minor thirds, this constitutes a fully diminished 7th chord. Okay, so let's go back to the problem on the previous page, and here's what we're going to write. We're going to write the answer. This is a 7, circle, 7, and the quality below is simply a fully diminished 7. Okay, so far so good, I hope. Honestly, none of the other chords are particularly difficult, but let's just try maybe one more example, and I think that should be enough. Let's try one more example where I write everything out and then maybe just do a visual inspection of some of the other problems. For example, let's go down to number 6. That's where we're in A minor. And the very first one, here, I'll put the arrow there. The very first one looks like it's built from the raised subtonic, right? Remember, this is bass clef. So that lower note, the one that's sharpened, is G, and G in the scale of A minor is scale degree number 7. Like I had said before, there's a quick way of figuring that out. You go from A down a step, which means you go from the tonic down to the 7th scale degree. Of course, if that shortcut is too easy, then you can always count from the tonic up. And you go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. G is scale degree 7. So we have clearly what amounts to a chord built from the leading tone. And without going over to the next page and writing everything out, I think it's pretty clear that this is a fully diminished 7th. Let's just check this visually and verbally. So the notes of the chord are G sharp, B, D, F. G sharp, B, and D constitute a diminished triad because G sharp to B is a minor third, B to D is a minor third, and G sharp to F is a diminished 7th. If you're not sure, invert. So F up to G sharp, well, F to G is a major second, F to G sharp is an augmented 7th. So I think that we are pretty confident that when we invert it back to F to G sharp is an augmented second. I hope I said that. I didn't misspeak. But when we invert it back, it becomes a diminished 7th. So this is a fully diminished 7th. So we write 7, fully diminished 7, and then on the bottom, circle 7, and we're all set. Let's do one more. Let's do something that maybe looks like a major 7th chord. So to do that, let's go over to number 5. And you know what? The very first one. Here, I'm going to put an arrow there. So why am I predicting that this is a major 7th chord? Or if you really want to be complete with your label, major 7th chord? Well, because I see that it's built from or rooted from B flat, this first chord. And the key is B flat. And I remember that in all major scales, the 7th chord built from scale degree number 1 will be a major 7th chord. So let's go over to the next page and confirm that that's true. So we're in B flat, and so I'm going to go, this is in treble clef if I'm not mistaken, right? So there it is, so 2 flats, and this is B flat major, and I'm just going to spell out the notes of the chord. So B flat, D, F, and A. How do I know it's a major 7th chord? Well, let's just confirm. So first, here's what we know. The triad embedded within the 7th, B flat, D, F, is the tonic triad, right? Because it's built from scale degree number 1, which is called the tonic, and that is a major quality triad. B flat to D is a major third, D to F is a minor third, B flat to F is a perfect fifth. All of those intervals constitute a major triad, as you know. So this is major. Now, what about the interval from the root B flat up to the 7th A? Well, if you're not sure that that's a major 7th, it is. What we can do is invert. And this is all to practice what we're going to do in the next section. But let me just write that out for you. So here's the inversion, D, F, A. The B flat goes on top. And now we just look. What is the interval from A up to B flat? Well, hopefully you are pretty confident that that's a minor second. When we invert, that becomes a major 7th. So we have a chord that is a major triad plus a major 7th. So this is a 1 chord, 7, and the quality is a major 7th. Okay, so let's go back to the example and write that in. So this is a 1, 7, and the quality is a major 7. Now, for this assignment, I highly advise you to follow the instructions, which means reading them in the first place. Not all of you do that very carefully, so please read the instructions. And when you indicate these qualities, be thorough. Don't summarize just yet. Don't simplify them to, for example, major 7th instead of major 7th. And the same thing for minor 7th chords. Don't write minor 7th, write minor 7th. There's one more that we should look for before we switch to section B, where we have chords and inversion, and that is, can we find any dominant 7th chords? Or if you remember, those are major, minor 7th chords. So I'm looking for a chord built from scale degree 5. Why don't we stick to the problem we're in, which is number 5. So I'm looking for the 5th scale degree of the key of B flat. Let's see, B flat, C, D, E flat, F. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm looking for F in the bass, and that happens to be problem number 3 right there. You can see the notes are F, A, C, E flat. And again, let's use our worksheet. So here are the notes, F, A, C, E flat. And pretty straightforward, F, A, C is the dominant triad in all major keys. It's major. And then from F up to E flat, well, that's a minor 7th. How do I know so quickly? Invert A, C, E flat, and F. What is the quality of that second from E flat up to F? Well, remember that E natural up to F are those 2 naturals that don't have a black key in between them. So that means they're a minor second automatically. E flat to F represents an enlarging, that's not a word, an enlarging of this step, so that E flat to F is now a major second, which inverts back to a minor 7th. So we have a chord that is a major triad plus a minor 7th. And the root of this chord is F, which is scale degree 5, which translates to an uppercase Roman numeral V plus 7. So a quick note for all of you, don't forget to write the number 7. Otherwise, it looks like a triad, right? Just a 5 is a triad by implication in root position. So you need the 7th to indicate that we are, well, spelling a 7th chord. Okay, I think that clarifies everything in section A, right? So again, you're going to write 5, 7, and the quality is major, minor, 7. Okay, so that helps you out, at least for the first half. Let's continue. What about section B, chords in inversion? What do we do there? Well, so here's the nice thing. They're not asking you for qualities anymore. They're just asking you for the correct Roman numeral plus the figures for the inversion. All right, so the inversions are given 6-5, 4-3, 4-2. There's actually a very simple way of going through this, right? I can give you a shortcut right now. So let's just review so we know what it is that we're actually being asked to do. So let's start with number 1. And we're in F minor with 4 flats, of course, because its relative major is the key that that's located on the 4 position counterclockwise, which is A flat, right? That's the relative major of F minor. So those 4 flats are B flat, E flat, A flat, and D flat. So let's go over and write this out. In fact, which one should I choose? How about I choose this one, the very last one? So the notes from the bass on up are B flat, D flat, E natural, and G. Okay, so let's remember what that is. I'm going to start a new page right there. So bass clef, F minor, 4 flats, B, E, A, and D. And the notes were, I hope I remember, B flat, D flat, E natural, and G. Okay, let me just check that once. You notice that wait, am I crazy? Yeah, it's spelled a little bit different. The notes are arranged a little bit differently, but those are the correct notes: B flat, D flat, E natural, and G. So how do I figure out what's going on here? Well, one way is to say the notes from the bass on up, right? And by the way, don't worry about the accidentals, just say the letters. So B, D, E, G. I need to rearrange them so that they're a stack of thirds. And if I do so, I'll find that the root is E, E, G, B, D. Remember that little exercise I would like you to do where you go A, C, E, G, B, D, F, 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 and so on. Do that so that you get comfortable, and once you realize that E is the root, you go E, G, B, D. So let's rewrite this thing as E natural, because that's what's given, G, B flat, and D flat. Okay, so that is the chord in root position. Well, we've practiced this in the prior section. We can see that it's rooted on the raised subtonic, or the leading tone, right? Because the subtonic in F minor is E flat, E flat raised becomes E natural. So this is E natural to G, a minor third, G to B flat, a minor third, B flat to D flat, a minor third. It's all minor thirds. So we know that this is a 7 fully diminished 7th chord, right? And the quality, of course, I know that the assignment doesn't require us to do so, but the quality, just in case we just want to keep practicing, is a fully diminished 7th, obviously. So how do we go from this to this chord in inversion? Well, it's like with triads, just determining which of the chordal elements, the third, the fifth, or the seventh, are in the bass. So which one is in the bass? Well, the B flat is in the bass. B flat is the fifth. So that means that this is, let's see, so if E natural is in the bass, that's root position. If G, the third, is in the bass, that's first inversion. If the fifth, B flat, is in the bass, that's second inversion. And if the seventh, D flat, is in the bass, then that is third inversion. Okay, so we know that because the fifth is in the bass, this is a second inversion 7th chord. What about the figures? How do we figure those out? So that actually is not particularly challenging. Let's go through it in some measure of detail. So this is what you do. You look at the bass and you start figuring out all of the intervals from the bass on up. So we're going to start with the biggest interval and then shrink down. So B flat up to G. All right, let me just move this thing because this guy's kind of getting in the way. All right, so back to the first chord, B flat up to G, and I don't care about the qualities, just the sizes, is a 6. B flat up to E flat is a 4th, and B flat, oh, did I say E flat? I'm sorry, E natural. I was misreading, not carefully enough, obviously. So that's a B flat to E natural. It's still a 4th, it's just not a perfect 4th, but that doesn't concern us right now. And then B flat up to D flat is a 3rd. So the figures for this chord are 6, 4, 3. And hopefully you remember from class the other day that of those 3 figures, one of them is optional. That's the 6. So this is a 7 fully diminished 4, 3. Okay? And what I want you to notice, here's a shortcut, is that essentially when you have any 7th chord in inversion, the 7th inverts to a 2nd. So can you find the 2nd embedded in this 7th chord? Well, yes, it's between the D flat and the E natural, right? That's where the 7th is. And we know, by the way, that that's that's where the 2nd is. I really should be a little more careful with how I'm saying this. D flat up to E natural is the 2nd. And you'll notice that it's an augmented 2nd because we inverted the diminished 7th, which is part of this chord. But that's a bit of an aside. The point is, where is the step, the 2nd? So if it's in the middle of the chord, then we're in 4-3 inversion. Okay, so let's go back to the problem. And first of all, we're going to fill this in. This is a 7 chord, fully diminished in 4-3 inversion. And let's see if we can find any other arrangements that look like this, where the 2nd is in the middle of the chord. So let's see. Let's look at number 2. So I'm looking for that 2nd in the middle of the chord. Yeah, here it is, right there and right there. I promise you that both of these examples are 4-3 inversions. So you can just write that down, right? The next thing you want to do is figure out what the root is. Well, how do we figure out what the root is? Well, keep thinking kind of pragmatically and strategically here. When we have a root position 7th, the root is a 7th below the 7th. Makes sense, right? In a root position 7th chord, like look at any of the examples in section A. The 7th is on the top, right? Because it goes root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. And so the root is a 7th below the 7th. Makes sense. What if you invert? Where's the root in relation to the 7th? Well, the 7th inverts to a 2nd. So now the root will be, if you have a 2nd, it's going to be a step above the 7th. I'm pausing to let you think about that. When you invert a 7th chord, where is the root going to be? Well, it's going to be embedded in that step, right, that we've been looking for. And the root will be a step above the 7th, as opposed to a 7th below the 7th, right? Because we're inverting. So in these examples, like look at this one that we've been dealing with, right? The 7th chord in the F minor scale. Let's take the step from this chord and isolate it. So we're looking at D flat and E natural. Okay, so in this chord rooted on E natural, where's the 7th? Oh, it's D flat. This is the chordal 7th. And where's the root? Oh, it's this E natural. So I'm going to say what I said earlier, and now you can look at this example. The root is a step above the 7th. Okay? So when you go back to these examples, for example, number 2 in D major, the two examples are both in 4/3 inversion, which remember is second inversion. And how do I figure out what the root of the chord is? Well, I look for that step. And so let's take a look at the first one, right there. So we're in D major, two sharps, F sharp and C sharp, and I'm going to read these notes from the bottom up. So for the first example, remember treble clef, it's D, F sharp, G, and B. I isolate the step. Oh, that's F sharp and G. Where's the 7th and where's the root? Well, the F sharp has got to be the 7th because a step above it is G, which has got to be the root. So if you take these notes and start from G, the root, and start building up by thirds, again, don't worry about accidentals. You should get G, B, D, F, right? Well, now you can put in the accidental F sharp, so G, B, D, F sharp. That chord is rooted on G and has been inverted. Well, G is scale degree what in the key of D? Think about that for a second. D, E, F sharp, G, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a 7th chord built from scale degree 4, the subdominant, in a major key, which means this will be what quality? Do you remember? Think about that for a second. The answer should be a major 7th. Okay, I'll write this all out in just a second, but we're just doing it verbally for now. So if I'm not mistaken, this should be a Roman numeral 4 in second inversion, which is 4/3. What about the next one? Well, let's see. Just read the notes. From the bass going up, it's going to be B, D, E, G. B, D, E, G. Well, find the step. That's D and E. D is the 7th. A step above the 7th is the root. That's E. So this is a 7th chord rooted on E. Build the 7th from E verbally. You go E, G, B, D. E is scale degree 2 in the key of D. And what is the quality of all 2 7 chords in major keys? Well, it's a minor 7th, right? E, G, B, D. So this is going to be a 2, lowercase, 4/3. Do you get it? Let's try this with the other 2 inversions and call it a day, right? So we're looking now for a shortcut to be able to quickly figure out what's in first inversion and what's in third inversion. Now, a little bit of a caveat before we continue, because some of you might be thinking about this. Well, this is all very convenient, the shortcut, but what happens if the chord is not in close position, right? Where all the notes are as close to one another as they can be within a single octave. Then we just have to look at the bass, right? Because that's always the determining factor in figuring out the inversion. But let's get there when we get there. So for now, let's just deal with the problem in front of us. Let's take another example. How about number 4? All right, so we'll do 1 from 4 and we'll do 1 from 5, and that should give you plenty of information, and then this lesson won't be overly long. Okay, hopefully we'll get under the 40-minute mark. So number 4 is in B flat major, and I'm going to isolate, how about this one, the first one, right there. So let's just read the notes from the bass going up, and then we'll go over to our scratch piece of paper and workshop this. So the notes are D, up to E flat, up to G, up to B flat. So D, E flat, G, B flat. So let's go over and figure this thing out. Okay, so treble clef, 2 flats, B flat and E flat, and the notes are D, E flat, G, and B flat. Let me just check that I got that right. Yep, it looks a little different, but that's okay. So how do I figure out what the hell this thing is? Well, let's do it in sort of the method we were just using, which is find the step. Well, here's that step, D up to E flat. Remember that if you see a step which represents an inversion of a 7th chord, or of the interval of a 7th, then the 7th will be a step below the root, or the root will be a step above the 7th. So if I'm correct, then D should be the 7th and E flat should be the root. Let's try that out. If I start building from E flat, I'll get E flat, G, B flat, and D. Right? Hopefully you concur that these are the same 4 notes that are presented in the inverted example here. So this is an inversion, and the second arrow, what I just drew, that's root position. So let's just make sure we know what the quality of this chord is. So E flat, G, B flat, that's a major triad, rooted on scale degree. Can you figure it out? E flat in the key of B flat, B, C, D, E, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a major triad rooted on scale degree 4, or the subdominant. And the interval from E flat up to D, well, if you need to invert it, as already given, by the way, D up to E flat is a minor second, which inverts to a major 7th. So this is a major 7th rooted on 4, which means the Roman numeral is IV, uppercase 4, 7, and the quality is a major 7th chord. All right, now we have to figure out the inversion. Well, the inversion has the 7th of the chord, or the chordal 7th, in the bass. When that happens, this is a 3rd inversion 7th chord. Remember, if the 3rd is in the bass, it's 1st inversion. If the 5th is in the bass, it's 2nd inversion. And then finally, if the 7th is in the bass, it is 3rd inversion. So what are the figures for a 3rd inversion 7th chord? Well, let's just go over to the opening example, right, for this problem. I'm just going to move this over so we have plenty of room. And we'll just figure this out by looking at the intervals from the bass going up. So we're going to start with D. D up to B flat is a 6th. D up to G is a 4th. And the bracket is already given. D up to E flat is a step, or a 2nd. So we use the same Roman numeral, 4. And if you remember, of those 3 figures, 6, 4, 2, the 6 and sometimes the 4 is optional, but like the book, I prefer using 4, 2. So this is a 4, 4, 2. Okay? So what conclusion can we make? 3rd inversion, or 4, 2 for the figures, is apparent when the step is on the bottom. Okay, so let's go back to the problem. So remember, we're looking at number 4, first problem. This is a 4, 4, 2. So if you scan the page for other chords where the step is on the bottom, those will automatically be in 4/2 inversion. So for example, let's look at number 5, the one in G sharp minor. Do you see any of these configurations where the step is on the bottom? Yeah, the last one, right? Here's where the arrow is. This is a 4/2 inversion. Now, to figure out what the root is, and therefore to determine the quality of the 7th chord, we just have to name the note. So let's read these notes from the bottom up. The problem, of course, is that this is a kind of intimidating looking key signature with 5 sharps. So let's see, 5 sharps. What's the relative major of G sharp minor? In other words, on the Ionian or major circle of fifths, what's at position 5 clockwise? The answer is B, right? And what are those 5 sharps? F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp, F, C, G, D, A. Keep repeating this data so that you really feel comfortable with this information. F, C, G, D, A. So let's read the notes from the bottom up. Okay, A sharp, B, D sharp, F sharp. Okay, if you're not comfortable with the sharps, start with just the letters. Remember that we're in bass clef, so it's A, B, D, F. Well, the second is from A to B, or A sharp to B, which means that the root of the chord is B, because the root is a step above the 7th in inversion. So the notes are, from the root going up, are B, D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. B, D sharp, F sharp, A sharp. Do you agree that the A sharp is in the bass? Do you agree that that means this is a 3rd inversion 7th chord? The 7th is in the bass. So it's a 4-2 inversion, as we already knew. B is the root, and B is scale degree what in the key of G sharp? Think about that for a second. You go G sharp, A sharp, B, 1, 2, 3. So this is a 3 chord in 3rd inversion. So we just have to figure out what is the quality of the 3 chord in minor keys. Well, we can do it the long way, which is just figure out what the quality of the triad and the 7th from the root to the 7th is, or we just remember what we did the other day. But you know what? Let's take the long way first, just because it forces us to practice. So let's do this in our heads. The notes are B, D sharp, F sharp, A sharp. B, D sharp, F sharp. What quality triad is that? B, D sharp, F sharp. Major. And from B up to A sharp, what's the quality of that 7th? Major. So this is a major, major 7th rooted on B, which is scale degree 3 in G sharp, which means this is an uppercase 3 in 4-2 inversion. If you need that spelled out, just quickly, this is what we can do. So I'm not going to worry about the, here, this is in bass clef. I'm not going to worry about the key signature. That's not important right now. But here's the root position 7th chord. B, D sharp, F sharp, and A sharp. Hopefully this will help you just determine that B, D sharp, F sharp is major. That's a major triad. And B to A sharp is also major. So this is a major, major 7th chord. B is 3 in the key of G sharp minor. So G sharp minor. So this is an uppercase 3, 7. Of course, since the 7th A sharp in the original problem is in the bass, it becomes 4-2 inversion. Okay, so go back to the problem and basically look for any of these 7th chords where the second, the step, is on the bottom. That is a 4-2 inversion. We have one more left, and that's 1st inversion, 6-5. So let's keep working with, I don't know, number 5. And we've got 3 other problems, and I'm looking for where the step is on top. Because remember, when the step is in the middle, that's 4-3. When the step is on the bottom, that's 4-2. When the step is on top, well, by process of elimination, that means it's going to be 6-5. Let's check that that's true. So let's take this first one right there. All right, read the notes from the bottom up, from the bass up. So we've got C sharp, right? Do you guys remember the key signature? F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp. So we got C sharp, E, G sharp, and what's the top note? A sharp, right? So C, E, G, A, if you are not worried about the accidentals. So let me write that out, okay? So let's see, let's go to the bottom here. We're still in bass clef. This time I will write out the key signature because it's always good practice. So there are 5 sharps, F, C, G, D, and then remember you go down for A sharp. And the chord, let's just review what it looks like, is, we start on C sharp. So we go C sharp, E, G sharp, and A sharp. So how do we figure out what's going on here? Well, let's work through it. So this is G sharp minor. Okay, so Same thing as always. We find the step. Well, there it is on top. And the two notes of the step are G sharp and A sharp. G sharp has to be the seventh because it's a step below the root. And so the root is also a step above the seventh. And so that root is A sharp. So if I'm correct, and if this method is consistent, then let's redraw A sharp on the bottom. So bass clef, there's A sharp. And let's just start building up by thirds. A sharp, C sharp, E, and G sharp. Right? That is a seventh chord, A, C, E, G, and you add the accidentals, and we produce what we already said: A sharp, C sharp, E, G sharp. Okay, so what is the quality of this chord? Well, let's see. A sharp, C sharp, E. A sharp to C sharp is a minor third. C sharp to E is a minor third. So this is a diminished quality triad. And what's the quality of the seventh from A sharp up to G sharp? Can you figure it out? You can also take away the two sharps. A up to G will result in the same quality. If you're not sure, invert G up to A or G sharp up to A sharp. The answer is, in both cases, G up to A, G sharp up to A sharp, major second, which inverts to a minor seventh. What's the quality of the seventh chord if you have a diminished triad and then a minor seventh from root to seventh? Not fully diminished, but rather half diminished, right? And it's rooted on A sharp, which is scale degree 2, right? So if you recall, in all minor keys, the quality of the seventh chord built on scale degree 2 is a half diminished seventh. So this is lowercase I, half diminished 7. Now we have to invert it, right? Or rather figure out the inversion, because that's the given problem. So here's the arrow to indicate which one we're looking at. And to figure out what we know this is inverted. And we also, by the way, suspect that this is first inversion. And how do we know? Because the third of the chord is in the bass, right? The root of the chord is A sharp. The third is C sharp. Can you all see that C sharp in this problem with the arrow is in the bass? So that's a first inversion. Let's just make sure we understand why the figures are what they are. So let's start with the intervals from the bass going up. So from C sharp up to A sharp is a sixth. From C sharp up to G sharp is a fifth. From C sharp up to E is a third. So this is a 2, half diminished. And if you remember, of those three figures, 6, 5, and 3, 3 is the one that is implied and not needed. So this is a 2, half diminished 6, 5, or a first inversion seventh chord. All right, so we go over to the original problem, and we write that as our answer: 2, half diminished 6, 5. And now what we can do is we can look at several other problems just to make sure that we know where the 6, 5 is, because it's going to be at the top of the texture. So for example, I don't know, how about going back to number 1, problem number 3. I'm going to put the arrow there. Number 1, problem 3. Oh, look, it's definitely 6, 5, right? Because the step is at the top. A quick way of figuring out what the quality here is, or what the Roman numeral is, and then the resulting quality, of course, is what's the top note? That is, what's a step above the seventh? Remember, when you have a step, I know I'm being kind of redundant here, but just to keep practicing, I find the step, the upper note of the step is going to be the root, because the root is a step above the seventh. So here, the top note is, remember we're in bass clef, is G. If you just start building a seventh chord from G, you're going to get the notes G, B, D, F. We're in the key of F minor with 4 flats: B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat. You apply them accordingly, and so you're going to get G, B flat, D flat, F. G is the root. That's scale degree what in the key of F? The answer is 2. So this is a 2 chord in first inversion, 2, 6, 5, but I'm not done, because I have to remember that since this is a minor key, that's F minor, a 2 chord, just like we determined in problem number 5 in G sharp minor, a 2 chord is a half diminished seventh. If you want to confirm really quickly, here's how you do it. This chord in problem number 1 is, the notes are G, B flat, D flat, F. G to B flat is a minor third. B flat to D flat is a minor third. Therefore, G to D flat is a diminished fifth, making this a diminished triad. And then finally, G to F is a minor seventh. How do I know? Well, you invert F up to G. That's easy. That's a major second. That inverts to a minor seventh. So this, therefore, is a diminished triad plus a minor seventh from the root to the seventh, G up to F, which makes this a half diminished seventh chord, rooted on G, scale degree 2, and in first inversion, because that step is at the top of the pattern. Okay, so that is a pretty good review. Obviously, I've omitted some problems. I've intentionally stayed away from number 3 and 6 because I want you to practice those C clefs, right? Number 3, remember, is tenor clef. This one, number 3, is tenor clef, and number 6 is alto clef. Remember that wherever the arches meet is going to be C4 or middle C. So keep practicing those, but this should give you a pretty good way of maneuvering your way through the page. Obviously, I didn't get to the 40-minute mark. I went over, but that's okay. At least this is shorter than a full class session in any case. So review. If you have any questions, let me know. This will be due by the end of today. I think you should be good with this. Let's just do a very, very quick review. Verbally, if you have a 7th chord, when the root is in the bass, that is root position, and the figures are 7, 5, 3, or just 7. In fact, you know what? To make sure this is clear, how about I just write this out, right? So let's use treble clef. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to use just any random chord. Doesn't really matter. How about G, B, D, and F? Okay, it doesn't even matter what key I'm in. Okay, G, B, D, F. So the root is in the bass because you can stack the thirds on top of it. G up to B, B up to D, D up to F. The figures here are from G up to F, 7, G up to D, 5, G up to B, 3. Of those 3 figures, 5 and 3 are optional, so this is some sort of 7 chord, root position. And you know what? Let's put this into a key context. How about C, G scale degree 5. This is an uppercase 5-7 chord. The same chord in first inversion means that you move the root to the top. So now we have B, D, F, and G. Notice how we have a step now at the top, F up to G. The lower note of the step is the 7th, that's F. The upper note is G. So the root is still G, and this is now the following figures. B up to G is 6, B up to F is 5, and B up to D is 3. This is still a 5 chord because the root is G, but the 3 is optional for the figures, so this is 6, 5, first inversion. What does that mean? The third is in the bass. So this is G7 over B, while this is just G7. Let's go on to the next inversion. So I'm going to move it down an octave, D, F, G, and B. All right, D is in the bass. That's all I'm doing. So this is a G7 over D. This means the 5th is in the bass. So this is second inversion. So root position, first inversion, second inversion. And you'll notice that that step is in the middle of the pattern, right there. And so the figures here are D up to B is 6, D up to G is 4, and D up to F is 3. Remember that of those 3, the 6 is optional. So this is a 5, 4, 3, or second inversion. And the last one is going to have F in the bass. So F, and then G, B, and D. So this is a G7 over F. That's third inversion. And the figures are F up to D is 6, F up to B is 4, F to G is 2. The 6 is optional, so this is a 5, 4, 2, or third inversion. So root in the bass, root position, and the figures are 7. Third in the bass, or the second, is all the way at the top of the pattern. That's first inversion, and the figures are 6, 5. Second inversion is where the second is in the middle of the structure, middle of the pattern, and the figures are 4, 3, and the fifth is in the bass. And finally, when the seventh is in the bass, that also means that directly above it will be your root, which means the second is at the bottom of the pattern, and the figures are 4, 2. And the seventh, of course, is in the bass. So if you can recall all that information, and I will post this to these worksheets I've been going through. I'll post them to your class notes. So hopefully this should be clear. I'm going to stop it right now because there's a lot to digest here. Good luck with this assignment, and let me know if you have any questions.